With the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC just around the corner, I wanted to take a look at how the returning Pokemon could affect Trickroom in Regulations E and F. Alright boys, so this video will be split up into 3 little parts. We'll look at DLC 1, DLC 2, and then the Data Mine Pokemon, because we know they're coming back, we're just not exactly sure which DLC they'll be coming in. And of course, we are here on Pokeos. They've got, basically everything, right? They've got all the new ones that are returning in DLC 1, DLC 2, and then once again, the Data Mine Pokemon. There isn't too many Data Mine Pokemon though, so we probably will start off with that. But for anyone curious, again, on Pokeos here, we can just go to the website. You can filter this via, part 1, part 2, and the DLC. So for example, if we go to part 1 here, you can see all the Pokemon currently returning in part 1. I do believe there might be more, but we're not 100% too sure just yet. I do hope there is more, but again, we will see in the near future. So to start things off here, I do think the most important returning Pokemon coming back in DLC 1 in particular is Dusclops. Now, for those of you who do not know, Dusclops is without a doubt one of the best Trick Room setters we have in the game, and there's a couple of reasons why, right? So for one, Violet is like insanely broken on this Pokemon, right? If we take a look at this here, this mod's HP stat is, it's pretty average, but its defensive stats are insane. 130, base special defense and defense is pretty nutty, right? You add the Violet onto that, even without investment, all of a sudden, you're talking about, what, 225 in each defensive stat, which is kind of crazy. This mod also loves just running like max HP. It also has things like Pain Split as well, which are insanely good when paired up with like low HP Pokemon, right? Because if you're going up against something that say is like max investment, all of a sudden, even if you've got more HP than them, like percentage-wise, you're still taking HP back just because your HP stat is so low. It's also, again, a very, very, very reliable Trick Room setter because it's a Ghost type, right? It's immune to Fake Out. And then also in, Regulation D, or, sorry, not Regulation D, in the Terra formats, it also has access to Terra Dark, which, one, Terra Dark is incredibly good on Ghost-type Pokemon, because it, now gives you a resistance to your, Ghost types, which you were weak to before. It also gives you a resistance to the Dark typing, which you were also weak to before. So it patches up your 2 main weaknesses, which is really, really cool. Also, Dark, is weak to fighting. You're a Ghost type, so you're immune to fighting. It just has really, really cool synergy there. A fantastic Trick Room setter. It has a really, really reliable move as well in Nightshade. Nightshade being like 50 power always is insanely good on a Pokemon like Dusclops. And again, this mod, it's so bulky. It hits, well, it doesn't hit hard, but, between Pain Split and Nightshade, it can do a lot of damage. It's also incredibly slow as well. Like, if we just go for something like, say, Sassy Nature here to test it out, you see that 27 speed there. Really, the only thing in the metagame under speeding that I think is Torkoal, at least off the top of my head. But this mod also has the ability to pair up with a lot of Pokemon, and that is something we'll touch on a bit sooner as well. But it has access to things like Bulldoze, right? Well, back in Generation 8 was incredibly good with, Bulldoze plus Weakness policy. We don't necessarily have access to that right now. We do have access to it. It's just not as good. But there are a couple Pokemon I definitely think, Dusclops will pair really well with, especially with something like a Weakness policy. But we will touch on that shortly. But yes, I do think Dusclops, without a doubt, is the best Pokemon returning, at least in terms of Trick Room, right? I think this Pokemon is going to be probably the best Trick Room setter we have. Look, it's definitely right there with mods like Cresselia and whatnot, obviously. But Dusclops is an insanely good Trick Room setter. It has the ability to pair up with a lot of Pokemon. Has a lot of utility too. Like, I didn't even really touch on its utility as well. But I do believe it gets access to things like Will-O-Wisp and whatnot as well. Yeah, it gets Haze as well if Dozo's a bit of a problem. Does it get Will-O-Wisp? Yeah, it does. It also gets Will-O-Wisp. It gets Icy Wind. Yeah, this one does a lot, man. Yeah, it's incredibly good. I definitely think it will probably be the best one in terms of, allowing Trick Room to really function. Now, the next one here that I'm going to look at is, I think, definitely one of the best Trick Room abusers, and that is Hunch Elder. Now, Hunch Elder is a Pokemon that has a, fantastic stat distribution really for a Trick Room sweeper, right? So, very similar to Ursaluna in the sense that it's a guts user with an insanely high attack stat. The main difference is, obviously, Ursaluna gets the Facade, where Hunch Elder, doesn't really have anything as good as that. But, when you've got Guts plus, Drain Punch, I believe it gets CC. Does it get Bullet Punch as well? It doesn't get Bullet Punch. I thought it had Bullet Punch. I don't know why. But look, it has a lot of, great coverage moves. Right? It gets things like Earthquake, it gets the Elemental Punches. I believe it gets Rock Slide as well. Am I correct on Rock Slide? Yeah, it gets Rock Slide as well. Obviously, too, this could also be a mon that potentially could get Upper Hand as well, which could be really, really cool. For those who don't know, Upper Hand is a new move coming coming in the DLC Part 1, I believe it was. And by the looks of it, it's a fighting type move, 40 base power, physical attack, that will, hit before any priority move and cause a flinch. So it could be really, really good for, potential Tailwind stuff, Fake Out as well. Like, if you're trying to set up Trick Room, you can now, lead that into their Fake Out mon and they can't kind of fake you out, which is definitely really, really cool. But yeah, Elemental Punches, Earthquake, Poison Jab as well for the Fairy types. This mon gets a lot of great coverage moves. And it also is also incredibly slow, right? So if we go, let's just say Brave, just to check this out, right? Brave, Nature. Oh, why are we not getting Brave? There we go. Hits 45 speed, you know, it's not like insanely slow, but under Trick Room, it could, you know, be really, really good. Its attack stat is as high as Ursaluna's, you know, with a Guts boost, you know, on a Flame Orb on this mon, it is insanely good, right? This one hits so freaking hard. But I also do think as well, something like, you know, potentially Iron Fist plus Assault Vest as well could also be really good. So this mon, you know, again, has a really nice HP stat. Its defensive stat, you know, pretty solid. Its Spadef kind of arse, let's be honest here. But, you know, if you run this thing even, like, potentially outside of Trick Room with AV, I do think on a Trick Room set, probably the Gut set is better. But obviously, you know, having options to run something like this, right, is also, you know, always really, really good here. And again, with, like, Iron Fist as well, it allows you to, you know, run, like, the Elemental Punches, right? You can run the Thunder Punches, the Fire Punches, the Ice Punches. Obviously, you know, you probably want to drop CC for, like, Mach Punch, maybe. That's what I forgot before. But yeah, this one has the ability just to, like, stick around with Drape Punch. It hits incredibly hard. You know, as I said, we'll swap it back here just because I do think this is a Trick Room video where I kind of want to touch more on the Trick Room side of things. I do think this one with, like, Drain Punch, Mach Punch, and then, like, you know, potentially just, like, better coverage here. You probably want, like, Protect. I know it gets Bulk Up. Does it get Sword Dance? Probably not, right? No, it doesn't. It definitely gets Bulk Up, though. Bulk Up is really cool on this one as well. But yeah, this one gets a lot of coverage, man. Even as I said, like, Poison Jab could be really cool as well, just to, like, make sure you've got a way to hit the fairy types. Terra as well, again, on mods like this as well. Like, Terra is, like, always really, really sick. You know, you're already a mod that's, like, weak to things like Fairy and whatnot, so being able to go for something like, say, Terra Fire, Fire Punch, or, you know, just something that allows you to resist them is going to be really, really important. Now, I would try to speedrun most of these here, as I don't think they're as good as, like, those two in terms of Trick Room, but I do think Snorlax's return in DLC 1 could be pretty big for a couple of reasons. So, obviously, everyone knows Snorlax is, like, you know, an insanely good Pokemon, right? It runs things like, is it Wikiberry? No, it's not Wikiberry. What's it go? It goes Figgyberry, right? Figgyberry. Yeah. So, you got things like Figgyberry, right? This one has an insane, you know, HP stat, really good attack, really good Spadef, very bad speed stat. Defensive stat is pretty lackluster, but again, you pair this with something like, you know, Intimidate Mon, and all of a sudden it becomes like a way, way better. But what this does a lot better than I think most other Pokemon is it kind of just goes like Figgyberry, it goes Gluttony, and then it just clicks Belly Drum. And then like this one, it just gets like +4 attack, and then you just sit there just like throwing off attacks. Now, I do think unfortunately Body Slam looks like it may be its best stab move coming into the format. But it also gets Heavy Slam as well, which I do think is really, really cool. And then you can always just run things like Protect, potentially Recycle as well. I'm assuming this one probably won't be a Protect mon, but I do think it could be really, really good. Just because, like, again, this mon's, like, it is built to beat Fluttermane, which is, like, crazy, right? Like, it gets a, you know, like a max power Heavy Slam, which is really, really good. It has a really solid, you know, attack stat here. It gets access to Belly Drum. You know, you can invest a lot into your, you know, your physical defense if, like, you really want to just, like, make sure you're able to eat hits on that end. And then again, you can kind of just like pump it into there. You probably want to run a bit more attack than that. Obviously, I haven't done any calcs for them on, but its special defense and HP stat are so good. Its attack stat is really solid. And then, yeah, its speed stat is just like perfect under Trick Room. Again, this mon, like in terms of like Terra Ghost could be really good on this just to get rid of its like one main weakness being fighting types. You could potentially go for something like Terra Steel, which I don't think would be good. Terra Poison could definitely be something as well because it still allows you to resist the Fluttermane Moonblast. While also just, you know, being like a solid defensive typing, allowing you to resist the fighting types as well. But I do think, you know, just for GP here, we'll go with the Ghost. But yeah, I definitely think, you know, even like dropping this a bit, going up to like maybe like 160, that could, you know, be a really good set on Snorlax. But yeah, this one I do think will be a menace under Trick Room, especially because of how good it is into Fluttermane. That's the main thing, right? It has Heavy Slam. You know, it can't be Shadow Ball. It can eat Moonblast for days. You know, it doesn't care if its special attack stat gets lowered. And it also is one of the best Belly Drum users we have. Probably actually will be the best Belly Drum user coming into part 1 of the DLC. Now, I quickly just want to touch on 2 other, you know, potential Trick Room setters. Now, I don't necessarily think either of these guys are as good as Dusclops here, but Trevenant is a pretty solid Trick Room setter. You know, it's relatively slow. It hits pretty hard. It can do a bit of damage. And then also Chandelier here. Chandelier's really interesting because it can pump out damage under Trick Room if you get it under it, but it is also like a really like good hybrid mon, right? Like this is the kind of Pokemon that can function as a Trick Room setter on a Tailwind team, right? You know, you have like a really fast mode, and then, you know, maybe like that kind of like balancy mode on your Trick Room team, right? Maybe you have like an Iron Hands paired up with your Tornadus, and then like maybe another like a Landorus or something that isn't natural, like isn't invested that heavily into the speed stat. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have this mon here, you run it up to like 107, and then, you know, hyper offensive matchups. You can use this to set up Trick Room. I think it's a fantastic Sash user. Obviously, you know, Terra Dark is good on it too. As you know, you already naturally resist the fairy types as well. And then again, this attack stat is just absurd. You know, if this thing starts firing off some like heat waves, you know, under Trick Room, and you don't really have a way to stop it, it can just straight up shred through a team. Now, there is actually one more Trick Room sweeper I kind of wanted to touch on. I did touch on it last time I, spoke about the DLC, but that is Vikavolt here. I'm a huge fan of Vikavolt. I think this mod's fantastic, at least in terms of design, and its special attack stats absurd, right? Like, we were just talking about the 145 special attack there on the Chandelier. This mod also has 145 special attack, which is, oh my god, Scott, which is pretty cool, yeah. It's really, really hard. This mod's biggest issue is it just has like a terrible like typing right in Bug Electric, like really good offensive typing, but its defenses are like kind of average. But I do think this mod, with its speed stat being so low, if you run like a Quiet Nature on this thing, it could do like a lot of damage, right? And again, the best thing about this is it has Levitate plus Terra, meaning you can go for like Terra, Steel, Fire, or Poison. You've got Levitate getting rid of a weakness, and then all of a sudden this mod is like absurdly good, right? Like I do think Terra Steel on this could be like probably the best, because you already naturally resist the fighting types. The biggest issue is obviously you are weak to the fire types, so potentially Terra Fire as well could be a bit better. But this mod could like fire off like really strong Volt Switches. It gets Discharge, I'm pretty sure. Does it get any other, like, I'm pretty sure it just gets T-Volt, right? It just gets like T-Volt, it gets Bug Buzz. I'm pretty sure it would get, what's it called? Flash Cannon, right? Yeah, it gets Flash Cannon as well. Actually, we can just pull up all its special moves rather than like trying to think about it off the top of my head, yeah. I mean, yeah, Energy Ball's decent. Obviously, no HP Eyes, Flash Cannon's there. Air Slash as well is kind of cool, which I don't think you're ever going to run, but still it's there, right? It's an option. And also Terra Blast as well. Terra Blast is another real big thing for this one, right? Even Electro Web as well for speed control, which again, I don't think you want to click if you're running this thing as your Trick Room sweeper. But I think it definitely has the chance to be really, really cool. As I do think its typing's pretty interesting, and with a decent bit of natural bulk here, like you could slap like an Assault Vest on this one. Go like max HP like that there. A really solid defensive stat. With AV, very, very bulky here and hits insanely hard. Now, the final two mons I do actually want to touch on here, at least for DLC 1 here, is actually the Gen 4 starters, Torterra, and Empoleon. Now, I don't necessarily think either of these mons here are going to be insanely good, but Torterra does have a really cool niche of Shell Armor, plus the ability to go for like, Terra, Water or something along those lines, right? Basically something that just allows you to resist our old friend Urshifu. Even like a Terra Grass on this thing could be really cool if you go like Terra Grass. What item would I want to run on this? Like potentially just like Rocky Helmet, right? Probably Helmet. Helmet seems solid. Drop this like level 50, yeah. But yeah, I think like with Shell Armor, the ability to like resist the Urshifus while having like a pretty solid HP and defensive stat, and then also being like decent under Trick Room with like decent Spadef here is like definitely really cool. You could just like run something like Brave. Why is my typing not going to work today? You just run like something like Brave, yeah, and then you just like run max attack. You've got access to like Wood Hammer, which is like obviously insanely good. You have Stab Earthquake as well. Do you have like Stab Stomping Tantrum is a big question. Obviously, it doesn't look like it has Stomping Tantrum. Oh, actually, it does have Stomping Tantrum. Obviously, again, we don't know what it's going to get come the DLC, right? But it gets things like Crunch, right? It has the ability to fire off some really strong attacks. And obviously, paired that with like Shell Armor, which means you can't get crit by the Urshis. It definitely has a place. I don't think it's going to be great, but obviously, I'm a huge fan of Torterra, so I would love to give it a crack. And then finally, it is Empoleon for DLC 1. Now, Empoleon is interesting for a couple of reasons, right? And one of the main reasons I was looking at this is our friend over here, Dusclops, right? So, obviously, we spoke about Dusclops with Bulldoze, yeah? Then we have Empoleon here with, like, Weakness Policy, right? And then you go Defiant. And then, like, you just throw on some, like, physical moves, yeah? I think just to get Liquidation, it gets, like, Liquidation. To get, like, Iron Head. It doesn't actually get Iron Head, which is kind of sad. I know it gets Steel Wing, but I don't know if you ever want to run Steel Wing. Let's just have a look at its other physical moves really quick here. Obviously, Jet 2 is like always really good on a physical attacker. Potential, Earthquakes as well is pretty nice. Yeah, look, it gets a couple decent options. Yeah, it gets like Rock Slide, it gets Earthquake, it gets Knockoff, right? Again, the moveset here isn't as important as what I'm about to touch on. But that is the Defiant plus Weakness Policy Bulldoze, right? Because what you can do is, right, you can protect this mon. Actually, yeah, you probably want like Protect on a slot. Yeah, let's just throw it there for the general purpose, right? Hopefully it gets Iron Head come DLC 1. That would be really cool if they finally gave it Iron Head. But yeah, we will obviously, we will wait and see. We will wait and see. But this is a mon where like you look at it at first glance, right, and you're like, Scott, why would you not run this as a special attacker? It's 111 special attack, 86, attack. It's pretty bad. Its speed being 60 as well. It's like probably a little too fast for Trick Room. But it does have a really cool niche here of like, yeah, you look at this and you're like, damn, that's a bad attack stat, right? 151, it's pretty bad. But then if you factor in Weakness Policy, boosting that up to, like the 300 mark, and then the Defiant boost from the Bulldoze giving you +2 to your attack as well, all of a sudden you're +4, you've got like 450 attack, and like, it doesn't matter. At that point, these liquidations are just like going to start wrecking people, right? Like even the Aqua Jet, right? If they can stall you out of Trick Rooms, the Aqua Jet is just going to like one-shot a Flutter Mane, which is really, really cool. But yeah, I do think Empoleon will maybe have a niche next to Dusclops. I'll definitely try it, right? Like, you know, I love using starters. Starters are great for clickbait. But yeah, I do think there is a cool niche there with Empoleon plus Dusclops. Alright, now that is it for DLC 1, right? I'll quickly touch on the data mine here because we're not too sure where this Pokemon's coming in. And that is Porygon Z. Oh, not Porygon. Porygon's coming back, but mainly Porygon 2. Porygon 2 as a Trick Room setter is like arguably a little bit better than Dusclops. Like, it's right there with Dusclops as like arguably the best Tailwind setter, Trick Room setter, at least of the Violet Pokemon. Obviously it was really big in, you know, Sword and Shield. Basically, the reason for it again is it has these really good like defensive stats, right? Like, not as good as Dusclops' defensive stat, unfortunately. Like, Dusclops is like insane 130s. But P2 is like 90, 95 respectively, really good. But the main difference here is the 40 HP versus the 85. Like, it's like HP stat is so much better than Dusclops'. It's actually kind of crazy. And then on top of that as well, it actually puts out more offensive pressure, right? So obviously you're looking at them on like P2, right? It has 105 special attack, which is nothing to scoff at, right? Like, it's pretty decent. Again, it's pretty quick, like similar to our friend Empoleon before. Like, it's relatively quick, but as a Trick Room setter, it's super, super reliable, right? It gets access to things like Trick Room. I didn't even touch on it when I typed it in. Terra Ghost is going to be really good for fake out stuff. But yeah, it's got Trick Room. It also has Recover as well to keep itself alive. Has access to things like Ice Beam. It gets the Bolt Beam coverage, which is really cool. You can always like fire off like Tri Attack as well, but I don't necessarily think that's great. Even Icy Wind as well if you want to play it in like a hybrid kind of mode. What other special attack? This one gets so many good special attacks, dude. It's kind of like the nature of these like normal types, right? Even like Shadow Ball, we kind of were like, oh yeah, like it can run like Ghost Terror, like Ghost Terror plus Shadow Ball. Like, if you get the +1 special attack, even with like no investment, yeah, like if this is all my special attack investment and I get the +1 special attack, all of a sudden I'm hitting for like 192 damage, like special attack there, which is like insane. It's more than what Fluttermanes have right now, right? Like, no Fluttermane is running more than like, you know, 192 special attack. So like all of a sudden this one can be under Trick Room, incredibly bulky, you know, has the recovery options here. And just all of a sudden, like, yeah, it's pumping out damage. We kind of have a special and a status move at the same time, unfortunately. But yeah, it gets access to Pain Split, you know, it gets Reflect, sorry, not Reflect, Protect. Obviously, every Pokemon gets Protect, but it has things like, you know, the yellow button everyone loves, the old Thunder Wave, has Ally Switch, which I'm assuming would come back. Even like Eerie Impulse could be kind of cool. But yeah, P2 is definitely, you know, right there with Dusclops as the primary, or the premier Trick Room setters, I think. Especially like, you know, you've seen P2 get like play in like Dynamax formats, even in restricted formats, I'm pretty sure P2 was getting play. But yeah, P2 is really cool. We don't know if it's going to be DLC 1 or DLC 2, but it has been data to be confirmed coming back in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC. Now, finally, I do kind of want to speed run this part a bit more, just because I feel like I have kind of dragged out the DLC 1 part. And I do think DLC 2 is not quite as you know, important. But a big one coming back is Rhyperior. Now, for anyone who played the start of Pokemon Sword and Shield VGC, they would know that Rhyperior plus Dusclops was the combo. This was what everyone was freaking scared of, right? Now, obviously, Rhyperior does not have Dynamax anymore, but the Stomping Tantrum plus Weakness Policy combo with the Solid Rock is insane. This one has an absurd attack stat, really good HP, really good defense as well. Its main issue is its special defense stat, but thankfully, like, right now, the only real special attackers, like, running around are, like, Fluttermane's obviously the premier one, and then it's kind of just like all physical attackers, and then, you know, you got your Chiyus, your Heatrans, which are like still good, but obviously primarily, you know, Rhyperior is like really, really weak to, you know, special attackers, and mainly the meta is physical. But on top of that as well, it has access to Terra. Now, I do think something like Terra Grass could be really sick for this Pokemon. One, that allows you to resist water. Two, it allows you to resist the ground types that you're weak to. It does give you... Wait, is it weak to... I don't know if this one's actually weak to ice. I always forget if the rock typing is weak to ice or not. Oh, sorry, resist ice or not. Don't think it does. So it probably keeps its ice weakness, which, like, you know, it's kind of scary for Chen Pao. But at the same time, like, Chen Pao doesn't want to eat, like, a rock blast or anything off this one, right? Or even probably, like, rock slides, you know, your better bet. But yeah, this one puts on a lot of, like, puts out a lot of damage, right? I do think it is probably the best Trickroom returning in DLC 2. I'm definitely curious to see what it does, though, right? Because I do think this one is really cool. I definitely think it could have a niche, but yeah, obviously we'll have to wait and see how, you know, things play out when it comes back. But you can see here, this one has a lot of coverage, man. I'd be really curious to know if it is going to get high horsepower back too. But even like, you know, Ironhead and stuff for Fluttermane is really, really cool. Now, this one here, I'm going to try and make like a quick 2-for-1 here. It is the Golems. Obviously, both Golems have been confirmed coming back. Now, look, these mons are like... I think they're... The biggest issue with these mons, right, is... Or at least Golem, right, is it was released in Generation 1. And, like, they were given stats that didn't make sense. Like, if you look at this thing, like, yeah, sure, it could probably roll really quick. It shouldn't be 45 speed. Like, this mod is, like, way too quick for what it does. But yeah, look, I do think, the Golems have potential. They do share the exact same stat spread for those who didn't know, both 120, like, attack and 130 defense. I think, again, like, with this one here, you're talking about, like, stab earthquakes, right? With this one here, does it get wild charge? Yeah, it gets wild charge. What physical moves does this get? Like, is there like a main difference? Obviously, it gets EQ, it gets explosion. Having boom as well could be kind of cool next to Dusclops. Like, you just lead this next to Dusclops, go boom as Dusclops like sets up Trick Room. But they could also put on a lot of pressure as well under Trick Room as well, right? It gets things like Iron Head, Heavy Slam as well. Again, like I've touched on it before, Heavy Slam into Fluttermane is super good. But yeah, these mons, like, they're slow, they have good attack stats. I definitely think they could be useful under Trick Room. I don't think they'll see much play, but I would definitely love to try out both of them at some point. The next one here, actually, I am kind of a bit more excited for. I kind of wish I spoke about it earlier, and that's Alolan Egg. The Alolan Egg here is pretty cool. It does a couple things, right? Mainly, it's, like, really slow. Not really slow. Again, like, these ones are slow, right? Like, it's weird. I say really slow, but, like, it's not. Like, Torkoal's really slow. These mons are just slow. But if we just go, like, something like Quiet Nature, yeah. Like, all of a sudden, like, this mon, it gets pretty slow into Trick Room. It's a Trick Room setter, right? Yeah, it's a Trick Room setter. It also gets things like, you know, like Stab Draco Meteors. I believe it gets Stab Leaf Storm as well. Yeah, it gets Stab Leaf Storm, like, just got, like, Protect or something, yeah. But this mon, like, under Trick Room, can absolutely pump that damage. Its defensive stats are decent. Its HP stats pretty nice. It is one of those unfortunate mons where it's, like, it really wishes its attack stat was, like, 30 points lower and that was split into its defensive stats. But I do think Alolan Egg here could definitely do something, right? Like, it hits so freaking hard. Like, this stat here is already insane, and then you pair this up with the fact that it has two, like, insanely powerful stab moves, right, that are, like, 130 base power. Even the resistances aren't going to take these super well. Its biggest issue, obviously, is it's going to be, you know, kind of weak to Fluttermane. And, like, maybe there's, like, you know, something we can do to, like, fix that. Maybe, like, Terra Fire, like, could be good here, right? Terra Fire Flamethrower. Dude, running this in a Sunroom team, actually? Oh, my God, I can't believe I didn't think of that before. Like, run this on Sunroom with, like, Harvest. Just keep getting your Citrus Berries back and just fire off, like, insane Flamethrowers in Sun. Dude, that's the play. You pair this thing with Torkoal Blaze. Like, this is your Sunroom setter right here. But yeah, I do think Alolan Egg's going to be really cool. I definitely want to try this one out. Honestly, I feel like I'm going to try a lot of these mods out. They all do look really fun. But the next one as well, actually, is my guy, Reuniclist. Now, Reuniclist, for those of you who do not know, Hard Body, as it was known as back in the day, is a super, super cool mod, right? In VGC, obviously, you know, with Overcoat here, it basically does not care about Amoonguss, and then on top of that as well, it can actually just nuke the Amoongusses, right? I can't spell Psychic. Yeah, this one can absolutely nuke Amoonguss. It has access to Trick Room. You can always run like Cover Cloak as well. It's something I haven't really touched on today, because I kind of always forget. Not everyone remembers Cover Cloak's a thing. But Cover Cloak is really, really good at making sure you get your Trick Rooms up. But this mod, dude, with these stats, it hits so freaking hard. So let me drop that to level 50. But yeah, again, 125 special attack here, a really, really good HP stat. It's really slow. Like, this one is really slow. Not many things are like 30 base speed or slower. But yeah, this one with like a Quiet Nature can absolutely pump out damage. And then again, it has a really solid HP stat, and you can kind of just invest it into like whatever you need, right? Unfortunately, it is one of those issues with like Trick Room mons. Like, it kind of does feel like you're always just like wasting EVs at some point. But yeah, this one can really, really do like a lot of work. Like, something like that there looks like kind of cool if you ask me, and then you just run like Quiet Nature. Yeah, obviously you hate that you're like wasting these 4 points of EVs, but it is what it is, you know. Unfortunately, Trick Room mons, especially when they're bulky like this, you do have to kind of, you know, just suck it up. Like, you could run something like that maybe if you wanted. You could also just run like a lot less special attack investment. But Reuniclist, I do think, is a really interesting addition to Trick Room. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to be better than Hat, because obviously Hat is that speed point slower. But I just love Reuniclist. I think it's a way better design. And again, Terra on mods like this are going to be really, really cool. But this one also does get a lot of like really cool special coverage as well. Expanding Force obviously is potential as well. Like, if this mon returns as an Expanding Force mon, you'd also think Hat would come back with it. But again, it'd be cool to see that. Even like Terra Ghost plus Shadow Ball is pretty nice on this mon. Gets a lot of cool moves. I'm really excited to see what it does. Now, finally, to round this off here, we are going to be looking at 2 more starters. Now, one of which is Primarina. Why can't I spell today, please? Primarina. I say why can't I spell today? I can never freaking spell it, to be honest. And then Instin. Now, Primarina's... We'll touch on Primarina first, just because Instin's boring to talk about, let's be honest, yeah. Primarina's cool because it has Liquid Voice, and it's again, it's at that 60 speed tier where it's like, you could play this thing as like a hybrid Trick Room mon, right? Which is really cool. I love mons like around 60 speed because I do think they are really good in hybrids, right? You run like, 85 speed, it allows you to outspeed base 100s while also still being, pretty slow in Trick Room. It just means like, hey, you just don't want to set up Trick Room versus, opposing Trick Room teams. This mod also is like really, especially defensive and hits really freaking hard, right? Like you just say like, for example, you run something like this. Again, you can run that special attack boosting nature. Item, we're not clicking Primarina Z. Obviously, we don't think we have Z moves back. But when you look at the special moves here, there are a couple cool things this one does. Now, obviously, it's a fairy type. Things like Dazzling Gleam and, Draining Kiss are really cool. It also gets Moonblast as well. Really, really good stab moves there. Sparkling Array is really cool too because it cures target of its burn. Now, I believe this... Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this hits all three things on the board, right? Which means like you could potentially cure your allies of their burn, which is interesting. I'm not too sure if that's ever practical. Like you want to hit a teammate that resists it, but you're also still hitting pretty hard. I do think though Hyper Voice is just always your best play here. Basically, Hyper Voice is boosted by Liquid Voice for those of you who do not know. Sound-based moves become water-based, so Hyper Voice is really, really cool on this mon. It also gets access to things like Ice Beam as well, which is really cool. This one has a lot of really cool special coverage, and it is in a pretty interesting spot, right? Like you could run this thing exactly the same way you run Flutter Mane, right? You just go something like this, and then just drop the Ice Beam for like protect, right? 3 attacks protect. You run your dual stabs here. This mon's it's got okay HP, pretty average defense, really good special attack and special defense though. But yeah, you pair this with like maybe like a like an Intimidate user, like, I don't know, maybe something like Incineroar, and it could be really freaking good. And then finally, we'll just touch on Instin here. Now, everyone knows what Instin does. Arguably the best mon in the game. I do think this mon will have, in my opinion, the second best usage. I just don't think this mon will have the ability to knock Flutter Mane off that #1 slot. But Instin does a lot of crazy things, right? This mon, defensively, you look at this, you're like 95, 90, 90. It's okay. It's nothing crazy. It's speed similar to Primarina. It's okay. Its attack stats decent, a support mon with 115, attack, like you always take that, right? Because it's just firing off like stab flare blitzes, right? Which is really, really cool. But what Instin has basically over like every other mon is just like one of the most insane kits of like all time, right? Like this mon just, like what doesn't Instin do, right? Like it gets so freaking much, right? Obviously it does suck because like this is the singles, stuff it's showing here, right? But like things like Lash Out as well is like pretty cool. I don't know if Lash Out's gonna come back. I hope it does. Throat Chop's like also another decent move. Darkest Lariat, I don't think I even touched on that yet. Yeah, like ignores stat changes, like that's really cool as well. But yeah, this mon, like its bag is so freaking deep. It is insane. Like it also has U-turn as well for like assault vest sets. This mon's item, like it does so much, right? Like there's like AV, there's Citrus, there's Figgy. Oh, what did I do there? I went full screen, sorry. I'm pretty sure like people even like back in the day around like Sugarberry and stuff for like Groudons and whatnot. So this mon does so freaking much. Like similar to Arcanine, right? This mon, like that right there, that's your offensive investment, yeah? Like if you want, creep it to like that, yeah? And then you've got 436 EVs to pump into like defensive stats. Like look at that. It's like, oh, like this mon already has like Intimidate, like it has like really good physical defense. A bang. Look at that, man. It's insane. Like, you should not be able to be that bulky while having that much, like, attack. And then just such a deep bag, man. Like, its bag is so freaking deep. I'm going to quickly pull up some of the old sets so we can actually see how deep this mon's bag goes. So quickly, like, this is just Instin, VGC 2022 we're looking at here. Obviously, you see Blitz, you see Fake Out, you see Parting Shot, all, moves that we said were good. Throat Chops there, it has Taunt as well, it has Burning Jealousy. Taunt, obviously, really, really good into Amoonguss. I didn't even touch on Safety Goggles as well. Safety Goggles is another really good set on this mon. You see these spreads here, like, people aren't even, running attack there. Check out 2021. It's basically the same thing, but they had Darkest Lariat. Again, I think that just comes down to what's in the metagame. Like, are there things running around with Hyper Voice, are there things running around with, like, like, setup, like, for example, Hisuian Gudra, right? Is that like popular? Is that running around clicking, a lot of, like Iron Defenses and whatnot? VGC 2020, again, it's got Parting Shot there. It's got Snarl as well, another thing, right? There's like, if you're really scared about like Flutterfish or like Fluttermane and whatnot, you sit there clicking Snarl. Like, dude, this bag, like this thing's bag, it doesn't stop, man. Like, let's even have a look back at like the Sun Moon days, yeah? Like 2019, it's got U-turn, knockoff Snarl. It has Roar as well. which is a cool tech there. 2018, yeah, low kick again. Like, dude, this thing's, its bag is so deep, and like that's the issue with Instin, right? Like this mon does so freaking much. It really, like, any hole your team has, this mon will fill it. Like, I guarantee you. And Fire Dark, it's like funny, right? Because a lot of people like talk about Fire Dark and like you see Chi-Yu and you're like, Chi-Yu was like a really good mon this year, right? Like VGC 2023. It was really good when it was like legal, but like it wasn't like, you know, the best mon in the game, right? And the main reason for that is Chi-Yu's HP stat is just garbage, right? Like its special defense is insane. Its physical defense is not bad, but you know, its HP stats kind of lackluster, and that was its like big issue. Plus, it doesn't have like the utility moves like Instin has. Instin busted. I think this mon on Trick Room, it's gonna be like the best support for Trick Room. It's funny too. I kind of just like mentioned Instin and was just like, hey, Instin's Instin. Yeah, this mon is like the best support for Trick Room. It'll enable Trick Room, you know, to get it up. It'll enable you to like, you know, potentially stall out teams if you're struggling to get the Trick Room up, you know, with things like Snarl, you know, blitzing to take out, you know, counters like a Mungus. It can taunt Munguses. It just does so much, man. Like this one's, not only is it good outside of Trick Room, it's good in Trick Room, it's good on Tailwind. Like Instin's good on everything, man. This one's busted. But yeah. Anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for this one. I've rambled on for way too freaking long now. But if you could, you know, if you like the video, click the like button. If you like the video, hit the subscribe button too. And also let me know down below what you think of Trick Room in the upcoming formats. I do think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what Dusclops and P2 do. Obviously, you know, we do have Cresselia, which is pretty damn good, especially paired up with Ursaluna. But obviously, you know, we do have a couple other pieces coming back as well. You know, Viper Volt is one I'm very excited for. Yeah, anyway, guys, that's going to be me for this one. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.